G'day and welcome to Insights and Storytellings with me, Moon Willow. Thank you very much for joining me and contributing your energies. I really do appreciate it. I realised that I haven't been doing this. Started off on a daily basis, and somewhere along the line I got lost. So for various reasons it didn't get uploaded on a daily basis initially, and then I lost the momentum. But underneath that, for some reason, I feel that what I'm doing here is actually speaking to more than just myself, and that it's contributing to others' understandings of what they're walking through at the moment. And although I can't always see clearly, I have this real deep sense that it is helping. So that's why I continue doing them. And for a Gemini, I guess I, on the whole, don't have difficulty in speaking, even through this weird medium. But there are certainly days where that is not as easy as others, and I get a real sense that I'm not alone in that just as we start to feel the energy of like the full moon and start to shift back veils and have more of a clear sense of how we're walking, where we're walking, how we're moving forward, that some sort of tripping stone comes into the fore, or we start second guessing ourselves, or we start questioning the very nature of why we're here, and we can get lost in our own minds, our own emotional responses to that. And it's very hard to then, I don't know, put our head above the parapet again, or just expose ourselves and allow other people to see our insecurities or our vulnerabilities. Because there's always a risk that I guess that someone could use that against us. I'm not entirely sure how, but it's almost like this other, I don't know, shadow self, I suppose some people call it, of am I good enough? Why am I doing this? Why someone might criticize what I'm trying to do. And I don't think that's just my story. I feel that that story is for all of us. So within that, I'm going to continue trying to put these out as frequently as I can, in the hopes that it does connect for others and we work out how to walk together forward. So with that in mind, I'm going to go to the crystal bag and keep plodding on. So we'll see which crystal wants to be heard, or chakra wants to be heard tonight. So we've got green aventurine, heart. And it's in our heart space that a lot of our beliefs of whether we're lovable, whether we're okay, whether we're likable, all of that resides really. And looking at what our heart desires can be quite scary, because the part of that for me is, if I find out what my heart truly wants or truly aspires to have, what if I'm not able to achieve that? Or what if I don't attract that in? Or if I manage to attract that in, is that what I really want? How do we actually get out of our own way long enough to really feel into our heart space as to what makes it sing, what brings us joy, how do we deal with the past hurts, how do we self-soothe? How can we have compassionate understanding for ourselves and consequently other people? So that's the feel I get from this crystal this evening, is very much how do we narrate our heart story? How do we listen to it? And in listening to it, how do we progress forwards? So I'm going to see which cards come through to expand on the heart song. I'll split them. Let's see which 3 cards come through. So we've got tonight the Man, Tower, and the Fox. So I suppose with the Man, you could take that sort of, I could take that sort of literally, I suppose, that I want a man in my life, but I don't believe that that's what it's about. It feels embracing our logical side, I guess, and seeing how logic dictates how much we're willing to jump into something. If we have a fear that our hearts might be hurt, or if we want something too much, then it can prevent us from actually, the fear of actually getting something could prevent us from getting it, that we could be blocking joy from coming into our lives because we're fearful of pain coming in again, or that those logical thoughts of we're not good enough, we've been poisonous in the past, we weren't heard properly, how do I ask someone to hear my heart if I can't hear it itself? So it can be sort of that side. And then the other side of that is sort of the taking charge as well. That masculine energy of taking charge, of being in control, being powerful, fearful that we might shine too brightly, that we scare potential love away, or that what we actually desire is too deep or too powerful to actually allow to come in, and we could block it in that way. So it's really about stopping and having a conversation and a connection within our heart space, and actually looking at, and this is for men and women, is looking at our emotional requirements, our emotional callings, as it were. How do we want to be met emotionally? How do we meet ourselves emotionally? And within that, is there words that come up? Is there thoughts that come up? Or do we mishear from other people that block that? So that we don't expand or explore our emotional landscape. So then looking at that masculine, logical energy that can actually be quite abrupt in how we actually move forward, or how we can move forward. I'm hoping this is making sense. This brings me into the next card, the Watchtower. So very much our spiritual connections. So there's a lot of talk in different communities that we sort of, we're reborn and we keep coming in, or we're living out past lives, etc. Or even if you take it from sort of our ancestral roots and the different stories that we may have taken on unwillingly or unwittingly, that has been talking about like either a strong woman or a strong man, or different relationships in the past in our families, that there is sort of like a moral to it, or there's a warning as to why that isn't able to occur, that the only way that you can have a relationship with yourself is if you deny an aspect of yourself. The only way you can have a relationship with someone completely and fully, it's not possible. You have to assume a part of yourself, or you can't fully acknowledge bits of yourself because you might overwhelm the other person, or your ideas are not good enough. So it's really having a listen into where some of these ideas are coming from, that that there is almost like an underlying aspect of a tale that's saying that you can only be good enough if you give up all your money. That's just a very basic one. Or that you can only focus on money, it's either money or relationships, or you can only have a relationship if you give up all aspects of yourself, or certain aspects of yourself, that you can't be whole. So it's really giving yourself time to have a look at what the stories you may have taken on from ancestors, even close relations that you may not be aware is contributing to your internal story. That you may be waiting for a perfect moment, and they may have passed you by because there was one aspect that didn't actually match up with what you perceived was the story initially. But really also linking into, from an ancestral point of view and your higher self point of view, of really having that loving compassion, that those stories were just that. They are stories that help give us information and not a rule book. They're more about clues and having a look at what would resonate more fully for your heart, as opposed to shutting it off. It's a way of actually opening it if we just tune in slightly differently. Which then brings me into the last card of the fox. The fox is about being cunning, or having a lot of, okay, so cunning. Our hearts can be quite cunning, and more often than not, somewhere in our stories, we feel that we're actually trying to protect ourselves, that if we had hurt in the past, we're trying to not expose ourselves to a situation that may include pain and hurt again. So we can actually fool ourselves into feeling that something's right or wrong, and not actually exploring it openly and authentically, that we can end up closing off before we actually give ourselves the opportunity to fully hear how we're feeling, or fully notice how we're feeling. And this goes back into the masculine card, the logical card, where we may end up having an emotion come up, or we start exploring an emotion. And again, as I was saying the other day, if we've got a blank piece of paper, we can say that there's a beautiful picture on there, but unless we have the dark lines, we can't actually see what that picture is. So unless we actually allow ourselves to experience different emotions and different stories, we won't truly understand or feel how we're actually responding to that. Nothing is particularly good or bad, it just gives us more information. And if something hurts, we have this instinctive quality of actually shutting off or closing off from getting hurt again. It's the fight or flight response to things that keeps us safe. And it can keep us safe, but we lose a lot in that safety. We don't get the chance to experience or explore joy, contentment, love, magic. We need all sides of it. So really being aware of how we're actually foxing ourselves or outfoxing ourselves from actually fully living, from fully experiencing the world in all of its glory, in the pain and the passion. So really this storytelling for me this evening is very much about entering our heart space with compassionate, unconditional love, having a look at the thoughts and the statements that we may be hearing as we start exploring the emotions, and how does that cut us off? How does that prevent us from actually flowing forward? Or how is that actually forcing us to go forward and experiencing something that is not actually what we want to experience? So fully getting out of our own way and really looking at all aspects of our heart. Noticing where did we pick up these thoughts from? It could have been a book we read. It could have been our favourite TV program. We could have been informing ourselves of what relationships with ourselves and others it meant to look like, without actually understanding where that's come from. Because if it's a TV program or a film, that's somebody else's idea, that's not our own idea. If it's about watching the stories of our ancestors or other family members, that's their story. That doesn't actually necessarily mean that that has to be ours. But we inadvertently take on and absorb so much from everybody around us that we forget, we neglect to spend time within our own space to actually get a clue as to what feels right for us. What would a compassionate, loving landscape look like for us? How do we love ourselves? How do we nurture ourselves? How do we punish ourselves in certain situations? But the only way we can really do that is in space. But equally, we need to be in relationship with other people as well, so that we can tell what feels right or doesn't feel right. So it's having that balance, it's having that integration again. So the other side of foxes as well is that they live in a family, they live in community, they look out for each other. The amount of times at night that I have noticed the foxes on the street, and they'll be calling to each other, they'll be making sure that each other is all right, but at the same time they're not right on top of each other either. They're still giving each other space. We can learn so much by other living creatures and watching how they interact with each other. And it's not to say that foxes have got it completely right. It's not to say any of us do. But I think the clue in this particular story, the insight into this story tonight, is very much about giving ourselves the time to breathe, to connect with ourselves and get a sense of what actually is bringing us joy, what is bringing us pain, and witnessing it, not getting lost in the stories of it, but actually witnessing it and noticing what is bringing us joy. How are we actually nurturing ourselves to feel better? How are we actually punishing ourselves to make us feel worse? Because there is often a lot of that happening without us realizing. So I'm hoping that other people are actually resonating with this storytelling tonight. I'm equally hoping that this is recording all the way through, because last night's didn't. Anyway, I'm going to see what heart sound comes out for us this evening. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you would like an individual storytelling, don't hesitate to get in contact with me. I'm hoping that we're all able to find love and joy in our heart space, and with a bit of luck I will be able to come back on again tomorrow. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Love you all. Bye for now.